Being home alone for many may be a comfort. A chance to relax or to just simply have some alone time is always welcome. But are you really alone? Please welcome me in joining We Shouldn't Be Here as we venture into the darkness. About 1 week ago, my parents and younger brother left for a month overseas, which meant I would be home alone. I've had a few parties, but 2 days ago, shit started getting weird. It was around 5 PM, and I was chilling home alone when I decided to turn most of the power off in the house. It was now around 10 PM, so I decided to go to bed. I fall asleep around 11, and when I wake up, I go to have my breakfast around 8 AM. I look over and see the dishwasher is turned on. Strange, because I definitely turned off that and the microwave. I passed it off as an error on my part, and continued the rest of my day. Now it starts getting really creepy. I have some friends over until around 11 PM, just drinking with them etc., and we decide to call it a day. I went to bed when they left, and I woke up around 8 AM. I'm just scrolling through Instagram on my phone when I hear the sound of footsteps upstairs. At first, I thought it could be my older brother, who may have come to visit unannounced. And then I hear the sound of my computer turn on, which I know for a fact he does not have the password to. Why would he do that, I thought. So I stood at the bottom of the stairs just waiting to see if he was going to come down, because I know he knows that I'm home alone. Around 10 minutes pass, and growing impatient I go upstairs, and nobody's there. I start to freak out. I check every door and window and they're all locked. I look in every nook and cranny of that house. There's nothing, and there's no one. I'm freaking out. I go back to my room to get dressed. I keep my iPhone on charge next to me on my nightstand. But when I went to pick it up, there was a crack on the glass. I don't know what's going on in my house, but I've never felt this afraid before in my life.
This happened a few years ago to me, when I was still living in my childhood home, down in California. I had just inherited my family home, so my cousin decided to move in with my husband and I, while she was attending a nearby college. My cousin and I were both working at the Lego store at the time, but I only worked mornings, and my husband and cousin worked nights, so there were many nights where I was alone. A couple of weeks before this happened, I had been taking stuff out to my car when I realized a strange, brown van with no back windows parked across the street. As I put the stuff in the trunk, the man in the van started making weird noises at me. I turned to see if I could get a look at his face, but his black Giants baseball cap was pulled down really far. Thinking he was just a creepy guy, I flipped him off and went back into the house. About 2 hours later, I went outside to go somewhere, and he was still parked across the street. Not thinking anything of it, I hopped in my car and headed to my friend's house. As I was driving, I looked in my rearview mirror and saw the same brown van following me. I turned on a whole bunch of streets, and he followed me down all of them. I turned onto the road that my father-in-law lived on and parked, thinking if the guy tried anything, I could just run there and be safe. When I pulled over in front of my father-in-law's house, the van slowly drove by. I looked into the van, and the man put his hand into the gun position and pointed it at me and said, "Bang," really loudly. After that, he drove off really fast. Now I have always been a little leery of staying home alone. My house had always given me the creeps because of how poorly lit it was. When I was alone at night, I usually just stayed in the kitchen because of how bright it was. I was watching a TV show on my computer when all of a sudden I hear a banging on the front door and the handle jiggling. It startled me for a moment until I looked up at the time and saw it was around 10 p.m. and knew my cousin was going to be coming home from work about that time. I got up and opened the door, but nobody was on the porch. I shouted my cousin's name, but still no response. I called my cousin's cell phone, and immediately she was like, "Oh hey, I'm on my way home from work right now." Before I could say anything else, there were 3 extremely loud bangs on the door that connected the kitchen and the garage, and the knob was shaken violently. I slammed the front door closed, locked it, and chained it, and ran for my room. My aunt called me while my cousin called the police, and I stayed under a blanket until my cousin arrived. When she came and got me, I was led outside to talk to the police. I was trying to explain what had happened, but the officers along the side of my house were distracting me. I walked over to where they were, but one of the police officers held me back. They opened the gate and saw that the door to my garage, which we always leave locked, was wide open. All of the officers in that area pulled out their guns and went into the garage, but nobody was in there. Afterwards, the police told me it was probably just some kids messing around, but if I ever get scared at home, just to call them, and they'll send somebody out. About a week later, I was watching something in my living room with my cousin and my husband. As I was passing by the window next to the front door, I realized there was a guy wearing the same baseball cap as the guy in the van, standing outside on the sidewalk, staring at the house. When he noticed me watching, he immediately locked eyes with me and slowly gave me the creepiest smile I had ever seen. I turned and yelled for my husband to go out there, but when I turned around, he was gone. I will say, though, that the baseball cap in question is really, really generic, and a lot of Giants fans wear it, so I can't say it was the same exact guy, but I felt like it was. 3 days after that, I was home alone at night again. I was on edge, but I was trying to ignore it, telling myself that I was going to be okay. I was baking cookies in the kitchen when I thought I heard a knock at my sliding glass door. My whole body tensed up, and I slowly turned towards the door. The lights in the backyard were off, and the kitchen ones were on, so the glare on the window made it impossible to see if someone was outside. Everything was silent for a few seconds before someone banged on the door again. I screamed, but felt paralyzed in fear. The person ran onto the deck from the sliding glass door to the 2 windows in the living room and started knocking on them as well. They came back to the sliding glass door to knock and started trying to open the door. I finally came to my senses, grabbed my keys, and ran outside into my car. I locked myself in my car and dialed 911. We sold our house shortly after that. I still have a hard time staying home alone, even though I'm 2 states away now.
In late 2009, I was only 10. Me, my mother and stepfather lived in a small town in Sweden, in a big house. If you were upstairs, you could still hear talking down in the kitchen, so it wasn't that isolated. One evening, when I was home alone because my mother and stepfather were going to my grandma's house, and I asked them if I could stay home alone, because as a typical 10-year-old I thought I was too grown up for a babysitter. After an hour of nagging, she gave up, and told me that I could stay home alone if I were to keep the door locked and never open it for anyone. I was really excited for me, and I stayed up very late watching cartoons. If I remember correctly, I was watching SpongeBob in our living room and eating ice cream. After about 5 minutes of eating that delicious ice cream, I was sure I heard a silent knock at the door. I didn't think much of it and continued watching the show. Another 5 minutes passed and I heard the knock again, but this time it was much louder. I was frozen in fear and waited for the knocking to stop. After about 30 seconds, the knocking did stop, and I could only hear the sound of the TV. I called my mother, and she said that she'd be home in around 20 minutes, and she told me to go into my room and lock my door. I went into my room, but kept the TV on, and it was quite loud. I sat in my room, and 2 minutes later, I didn't hear someone knocking, but banging very loudly on the door. I was frozen in fear once again. After around 3 minutes, I could hear the door lock turn and someone walk in. The person was inside my house whilst I was home alone. I sat there in my room quietly, and then the TV turned off. The footsteps were louder and louder, and I felt as if it was coming towards my room. After a couple of seconds, the steps stopped, and I could hear the knocking on my bedroom door, and an old man said, "Let me in. I have something for you." I started screaming and crying from my mother, and the man started shaking the door handle. After around 2 minutes, I heard the car outside. I looked out the window and it was my mother. I opened the window and screamed for help, and said that there's a man in my house. My stepdad quickly ran into the shed and got his axe and ran up the stairs. The man quickly ran out of the back door, and my stepfather ran after him in the streets. My mother called the police, and my stepfather calmed me down when he got in. This is an experience that I have never forgotten.
It was the middle of summer, and my parents had left for the weekend to go to our house in Cape Cod. It's about a 2-hour drive away, so it's no big deal for them to leave me alone for a few days. My mom had made me some pasta for me to heat up to eat whenever, and I had some money if I wanted to order a pizza. Things were all good. The first night I was alone, I stayed up till 3 in the morning playing Xbox, so I woke up really late the next day. I checked my phone when I woke up and saw it was a little past 1. I had made plans to play some street hockey with my friends at 3, so I threw myself out of bed and stumbled into the shower. I take really long showers, so when my parents are gone, I go mental. I was in there for about 45 minutes on my phone, scrolling through Reddit and Twitter, when I heard my front door open. The bathroom is directly up the stairs from the back door, and the thing is pretty loud when it opens and closes. I immediately froze, since obviously I was supposed to be alone. I waited for about 2 minutes, listened to try and hear anything else, but nothing. I figured it was just the wind, or maybe my parents were home early, so I turned off the shower, wrapped my towel around myself, and slowly walked down the stairs to check it out. The stairs to the kitchen, where the back door is, are pretty tight and walled in, so I can't see into the kitchen when I walk down. Even though my house is old and each step on the stairs makes a super loud creak, I still took my time and tried to be as quiet as possible. I probably took 45 seconds walking down all 12 of the stairs. So when I got to the second to last stair, right before I could see around the corner and into the kitchen, I took a little breath to compose myself. In my mind, I knew I was being stupid. There obviously wasn't anything in the kitchen. There's no way I wouldn't have heard another noise. And there's no reason for them to be in the kitchen, even if there were burglars or something in my house. After sort of mentally chastising myself for being such a wuss, I sort of chuckled to myself for being so stupid and just normally walked the last 2 stairs and turned the corner into the kitchen. Standing about 2 feet away from me in the middle of my kitchen is a man staring straight at me, perfectly still, with a massive smile across his face, just staring at me. The thing I remember most vividly wasn't his face or his smile, but his arms. They weren't just at his side. He held them in the strangest, most abnormal position I've ever seen. They were where one would normally hold their arms, but he had rotated them to the point where they were almost completely reversed, as well as lifting them up and a little behind himself. I don't know why I remember this so much, but it's just the most demonic, abnormal position I've ever seen. Honest to God, I think I almost had a heart attack right there. Looking back, I can realize how fucking creepy this situation was, but in the moment, I just took a step towards him and punched him as hard as I could right in the jaw, sort of half slapping, half pushing him towards the ground. The second I connected, I beelined up the stairs, dropped my towel in the kitchen with my heart beating out of control. I fucking sprinted into my room and locked the door behind me. I quickly put a chair up against the doorknob like you see in TV. Almost without thinking, I immediately dialed 911 and nearly, in tears, told the operator what happened. As I sat on the floor of my room, in practically the fetal position, staring at the door praying that a cop would be here soon, I noticed the light coming from the gap between my door had stopped. The man was standing outside of my door. There's no words to describe the feeling I had. I was paralyzed with fear, watching the shadow across the bottom of the door shift in tiny ways. I stayed balled up, staring at the gap, praying the man would go away for what seemed like an hour. All the while, the 911 operator was asking, "Hello, sir? Sir, are you there? Hello?" I didn't want to make a noise, and even if I wanted to move my arms to bring the phone to my mouth, I don't think I could have. Eventually, the light returned to the gap, and I heard the faintest of footsteps, slowly creaking the wooden floorboards as he walked down the hall. It was silent for minutes as I just sat there, curled up, unable to even speak. I heard banging on the front door and the sound of 2 police officers entering my house. I finally felt safe, and I opened the door to the 2 of them standing there. I almost cried. Nowadays, my parents don't even leave me home alone anymore. Thank God.
Okay, so my parents left to downtown Phoenix for a special meeting they had. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, so it was a really long ride, maybe 2 hours. I was left home alone because my brother and his girlfriend went to go eat somewhere. I was a wuss, so I turned off all the lights in the house and locked myself in my room. And I had my German Shepherd with me. I was on Skype with my friend and playing Xbox One. 2 hours passed and it was already 10 p.m. I told my friend that I had to go and that I'd talk with him tomorrow. I then shut down my Xbox and turned off my PC and went to sleep with my German Shepherd next to me. 30 minutes later, my German Shepherd jumped out my bed with its ears up, and I saw that he was shivering. I heard my front door open, and at first thought it was my mum and dad, but they usually go through the garage door, so naturally I assumed it was my brother and his girlfriend. I opened my door and saw that my front door was closed. I could see nothing but pure darkness. My German Shepherd ran into the kitchen and barked. I was scared, and the German Shepherd kept on barking. I called my friend on Skype and he picked up. I told him that someone had broken into my house, and I didn't know who. He said to calm down and to call the cops, and at that moment I noticed my dog's barking had stopped. I told my friend to hang on, and I slowly went down to the kitchen to check it out. My dog was still there, but standing, still, and not moving. I heard my front door open, and at that moment I saw the man run out. I quickly locked the front door, turned on all the lights in my house and ran to my PC to tell my friend that he left. But what he did say will haunt me for the rest of my life. Me. Dude, this guy just left my house. I'm shaking right now. Him. Who was the tall dark dude that entered your room, looked at me, took your photo on the wall and left? I looked at him in shock. I turned around, and the picture that had been on my wall was in fact gone. I called my brother to come, and 15 minutes later he did. I told him and his girlfriend about what had happened, and they promised to always stay with me whenever my father and mother were away. I'm now terrified of being home alone, and I don't know why some sicko would take my picture. But whoever you are, let's not meet again.
Hey guys, Mort here. Wait, no, this is We Shouldn't Be Here. Congratulations, you made it. You survived these 5 horrifying stories. Now head over to my channel to finish off these 10 horrifying at-home alone stories.